I'm Andrew from SBC.
I'm Malcolm Merrickasson.
It's basically a community spot that can accommodate whatever people want to do, and there's a gigantic skateboard ramp here. Malcolm and Peter Ducamont from Skull Skates kind of fell out of the sky at the same time that I was looking at this place, and it all sort of came together at the right time.
Huge sense of community down here, and more so than even living in my own neighborhood. Like, I know more people down here just from working and seeing day to day on a first name basis. It's awesome.
It can be a pretty gray and dark block, and there's, orange people are excited to see orange and blue and green and red on the front of the building, and see that there's young artists from the neighborhood working here, and see that there's musicians from the neighborhood jamming here, and they're just happy to see life into the place, see people having a good time. We did everything here from drywalling and demo and garbage cleanup right to wiring it and plumbing it. And we found an old cymbal.
Glassware,
old opium jars in the basement. The lore of the Buddha is just kind of Vancouver history, I mean, it's tough to really hear a lot of solid historic history about the place, but there's tons of stories out there that we've always heard. December 6th, we hosted an event for the Vancouver Heritage Foundation where they unveiled a plaque that they asked us to sponsor.
So this is dedicated to the women and children of the downtown east side. SBC Cafe hopes to be part of this community, a safe haven for people to come and skate, have a cup of coffee, eat, maybe hear some music. And we really want to thank the Vancouver Heritage Foundation for recognizing this spot on which the Smiling Buddha stood and was a part of this community since the 1950s. And I'm really glad that it didn't get torn down like so many other things in Vancouver. So this plaque is dedicated to this community, a thriving downtown east side center, and we wish you all the best.
I'm talking with April Porter. And April, can you tell us a little bit about your relationship with the Smiling Buddha Cabaret?
Well, I had a roommate at the time, Clayton McKay, and we came to a couple of gigs. It was sort of this haphazard thing happening at the Buddha. We started promoting gigs and pretty much had 4 bands a night. But you know what I loved about it was that everybody could play. Like if you were a band just starting out and you really were itching to show somebody your stuff, you could. And also I used to get a kick out of, because at that time you could phone into the various newspapers for the free listings event. And so every week I was phoning those people. And I remember once the lineup was death sentence, I think it was, day-glow abortions and bludgeoned pigs. And the woman on the other end was going, pardon me, dear? In a city that seems to tear down everything, I'm really glad to see that the Heritage Society is recognizing the Buddha and its part that it played. And it also, brings some vibrancy to the downtown east side, that this isn't a forgotten neighborhood. Things happen here, things thrive here.
I heard the people talking about how Little Daddy and the Bachelors and various R&B groups used to play here all the time. So I was intrigued, but when I found out where it was, I was too scared to come here. Well, there was a whole circuit of bands that used to play at the Smiling Buddha. And the one that I used to hear about a lot was Little Daddy and the Bachelors. And this is Little Daddy up here. And notable is that Tommy Chong is on lead guitar right here. In those days, they had usually a white local band backing up a black singer. So this is Jason Hoover and the Epics, and they played here a lot. I think we should preserve as much of the city as possible and as much of the old venues as possible before they're gone forever and nobody can remember anything about them. So I think this is a good thing.
The reason why I was able to get into the Buddha is because I was, as a musician, I was 15 and I looked like I was 12, and there's no way I would have got in through the front door with Igor, right? So I came here as a performer, and through talking with a lot of other people in interviews, some people who are here, they talked about forming a band just so they could get into the Smiling Buddha, and that was the whole reason why they formed a band, so they could open up for DOA or the Subhumans, yeah. And so what happened was I didn't start playing here till like 81, 82. And Nancy was the person that I dealt with most, and she was the person who really was like a mothering figure to these 15-year-old kids who were in here. She made sure we had Pepsi, she made sure we were happy, and we always felt safe in here. Even though when I think back, I think, what were my parents thinking?
I one time watched Igor ID a guy who had a beard basically down to the ground. The guy he was so old, it was crazy. I'm just sitting at the bar watching Igor, and this guy had his beard's down to the ground, and the guy didn't have any ID. And Igor wouldn't let him in. He's like, no ID, you don't come in. I'm like, Igor, the guy is 200 years old. And he's like, nope, no ID, no in. And he didn't let the guy in. The guy had to go, I don't know where he went, but he didn't come in. And meanwhile, I'm like 16 sitting at the bar.
But yeah, no, the Buddha was a great place because, everybody could come here and feel at home, and and so many great bands, so many great people.
It's very easy to say in Vancouver that we don't have any history here because people say it's such a young city that there's nothing happened here, and you really only have to scratch the surface of even a old building like this to find some of the most amazing stuff that's happened here. There's a habit in Vancouver especially in some history tours, if you go on them, you go to a building or you go to a street corner and people talk about, well, what used to be here. And as Michael was just saying, we've done a very good job in the last, since Expo in particular, but even more so in the last 10, 15 years, to get rid of a lot of old buildings. So it's remarkable, and it's a credit to the guys who are running the space here now, who managed to save the building, which probably wouldn't have lasted another year before caving in and being demolished by neglect, to keep this here, so people can stand out front or come inside now and be here and visit this place again. Because there's very few places in Vancouver that are cross-generational places where you could go home and talk to your older brother and say tonight or something, hey, I went to the Smiling Buddha today. And he would say, I went there. And we don't have those places in Vancouver, and there's less and less of them. So it's important we keep them, and best of luck to the owners here. So
I used to live behind the Carnegie from 95 to, off and on with buddies till 99, and we knew about the Smiling Buddha Cabaret just from the stories that were always around on the street. Grew up listening to all the punk bands that played here and around, and grew up inspired by them, and I'm into fixing up old stuff, and I'm a carpenter, so this is what we did. We're putting food on the tables. We're trying to put a healthy food out to people affordably, which is something the neighborhood really needs. We're encouraging athletics and youth, which is something that can help keep kids clean and out of trouble. And we're encouraging arts and dance and a lot of different programs, and people are interested in the place. It's our hope that it can be something really positive and safe going forward.
The sunshine